Hello everyone, you're listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast. My name's Oliver G. This is a bit of a different episode today. For one reason, I've been getting a lot of emails from you guys asking me about daily life in France, daily life in Paris with this coronavirus going around. People asking whether they should cancel their trips, people asking exactly what's happening in Paris, if it's getting worse. And after I responded to a bunch of the emails, I thought, it might be better to just do a podcast with someone who's monitoring the situation very closely. So I invited in Ben McPartland. He is the editor of the local Europe. So they do Europe's news in English. They've got websites in a lot of the main European countries, and this includes France and Italy, two of the countries especially affected by this virus. His office is in Paris. I had him in the studio today to ask him about everything that's happening and, whether you should come to France or not. So here's our chat, and if you want to find out more from these guys, they're doing a great job. thelocal.fr for the France website and thelocal.it for the Italian website. Let's get right into it. Okay, Ben McPartland, welcome to the studio.
Hi, Ollie.
I wish it was under more fun circumstances that you were in here, but it's not, is it?
No, not at the moment. It's quite serious,
right,
in France and around Europe.
So I think what we'll do is just jump straight into this serious topic. And this is something you've been covering. Is it trumped everything that the news?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and we had strikes in France. We had Brexit. We've been covering, but now it's pretty much wall-to-wall coronavirus information that we're covering.
Right, and that's something that people have got obviously a big appetite for reading. You're getting more readers than usual coming in and checking this stuff?
Yeah, it's been incredible in terms of numbers of readers. I think it's taken us by surprise, really. Even before this developed into a kind of big, news story, when we had a small number of cases in France and even in other countries, there was a huge amount of people looking and searching for information, which suggests that I think that, the general public out there in the world at large are pretty worried about it.
And is this people in France that are checking it in English, or are you getting a lot of people from around the world interested in it?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, I think there's definitely an interest with people who are booked to come here, tourists or regular visitors. France gets a lot of people who come every year who might have homes here, who want the latest situation. But it's also people who live in France, who are keeping up to date with what's happening, either whether it's, in different regions, looking at the kind of daily map that we produce that shows where the hotspots are, where the kind of main outbreaks are, or just the government announcements, what they need to know, the advice.
So why don't we start on what I figured we'd talk about is we'd start on the practicalities, the stuff that you guys are reporting on, the questions you're getting from readers back home, and then we'll talk a little bit about how it's affecting daily life for everyone, but specifically about you. You work in an office with a lot of French people, and we'll just sort of play it by there. But you guys must have been getting emails. I know I've been getting a lot. Should I postpone my trip? Is there a clear-cut answer to it?
Yeah, indeed. We've had a lot of questions like that. There isn't a clear-cut answer. I mean, this happens with every kind of big incident in France. We had the same kind of questions with terror attacks,
right.
And all you can say to people is you need to make up your own mind, but you need to inform yourself as best you can. So look at your government's own travel advice. The United States, the British government produce very regular, up-to-date travel advice on France. Neither country is at the moment, as far as I know, saying don't come to France, which is very much unlike what they're advising for people going to Italy.
Sure.
So nevertheless, there are areas of France in the north, in the Hauts de France, between Paris and the north coast, in the east and in part of Brittany called Morbihan, which is quite touristy, where there's been outbreaks. So, the advice would be to avoid traveling to those areas where daily life has been affected. Gatherings are not allowed, schools have been closed, etc. But in terms of France as a whole, there's nothing at the moment to say don't come. That was the same with Italy a couple of weeks ago. So, things change with the spread of this virus quite quickly. But I mean, I think I would say to your listeners, your followers, just to make an effort to inform yourself, as best you can.
So do you think that, I remember back when the terror attacks were happening, or after the terror attacks, that different countries were giving their citizens different, varying levels of advice. I think I can remember that the Americans were being told France is a danger zone right now. Is that typical?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We looked at the travel advice from the United States to its citizens, and it was still very much in line with France is dangerous. It was more linked to the Yellow Vest protests,
Interesting.
Avoid town centres on weekends, avoid Paris, the Champs-Elysees at a weekend. So it can be out of date. I mean, which in that case, we try to reassure people, actually, it's very easy to avoid a protest in Paris, even
Definitely.
if you don't judge on what you see on the television, the kind of scenes of violence are very, very located in specific areas. But in terms of, different countries offer different advice. They don't always keep it right up to date, which is why it's worth asking and reading, the news. And
Sure. And a lot of people, I think that's why a lot of people send in messages to people like me or you guys asking us, because we're a person on the ground and we can talk about daily life. And I want to talk about that after this idea. A lot of people have been talking about whether the media around the world is sort of exaggerating this, panicking people unnecessarily. You work in the media, you guys have a news site. What do you think about that?
yeah, it's very tricky for the media. I've read media stories, so I work on it on our website, and I also read other websites. And there are stories that I've read on good news sites that have made you panic. I think certain stories jump right to the end of this, so they'll say, what's going to happen if supermarkets run out of food, if the police can't investigate all the crimes, if firefighters can only pick certain incidents to go out to. I mean, that's kind of jump into almost the very end of what could happen here. I think probably the responsible thing to do is just to report what we know now, what the advice is from the governments on a daily basis, what to do, what not to do, and that includes don't panic buy. There's no reason to panic buy at the moment, although we see it.
Have you seen it in Paris?
I haven't seen it in Paris. We've been keeping a close eye on it, going in supermarkets. I was in the UK at the weekend, and people I was talking to there were talking of no toilet roll, no hand gel.
In Australia, they're going crazy for the toilet roll.
Yeah, same in Australia.
Yeah.
It's it's strange why we can't work out why the toilet roll.
I think I read a theory on it was that because the packets are so big, like 18 pack, they can only fit 15 or 20 of them in the supermarket sometimes.
Right,
So it only
so they
takes
go
15
quickly.
people to buy, whereas tins of baked beans.
Yes.
I think that's the theory.
Interesting you say that. I saw a picture of in the UK of a baked beans next to the toilet roll, and the toilet roll had gone, but the baked beans were full. So people being intelligent not to buy the beans. But no, getting back to your question about Paris, you'll see notices on pharmacies saying no hand gel, no masks. I think that's probably just they didn't have a large number of masks to be sold. There's no doubt people are buying hand gel, masks and stuff. But if you go in a supermarket, I haven't seen anybody panic buy at the moment. I think it's one of these things that once it starts, it can kind of take off quickly. But no, I think at the moment.
Okay, so what about other things in daily life? In the office that you work in, if there were a visitor who's never visited you guys before, if they came in, would they think, hang on, a lot of sterilized hand stations or anything like that? Has things
No,
changed?
I think in our office we're just eating a lot of nuts and fruit to try and stay healthy. Apparently
Really?
they're good for your immune system.
What, everyone, the French people as well?
No, I think the French people are generally healthy. I think it's just me. I used to eat chocolate for breakfast. I think it's kind of made us all a bit more health aware. I think people are washing their hands more, following the advice. I think one thing you don't see is people doing la bise, the French greeting kiss on each cheek.
Yes.
I went to a 70th birthday recently, and we all got an email saying, please don't attempt to do la bise, kiss anybody. And I remember turning up, and a lot of the younger people were like, on s'en fout, we don't care, and carrying on doing la bise. But to be fair, the older generation who was there were like, no, you don't understand. We're actually quite scared about this. We just don't want to take any risk because they're the age group that are much more at risk than young people, So there's a real difference in view on it. So I would think that, I would say that handshaking and la bise and stuff is kind of been put on hold for a while.
I think so too. Well, when we met, you offered me the elbow.
Yeah, people
I didn't quite know what to do. Whether
touching
I should
elbows
take it.
and touching toes, whatever. Just because people feel the need to make a gesture. I mean, I think what people were talking about this birthday was how bizarre it is not to be able to greet someone in the traditional.
So just to go back to this traditional kiss that Ben's referring to is obviously the left-right cheek kiss that's so popular around France, or right-left depending on where you are. It's quite a germ. Like a lot of foreigners don't dig that anyway because it's kind of a invasion on personal space. So it's no surprise that people are.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we were just talking the other day about whether it will ever really come back. All this makes people question their kind of daily habits. Shaking hands. All we hear now is how shaking hands just spreads germs.
Yep.
And le bis as well. So if they're all advising not to do this at the best of times, the flu's around every winter. Is it something we shouldn't do at all? I mean, I think it will probably come back slowly as these things always do, but it's definitely making everybody think about just personal hygiene.
How about other parts of daily life? You seen anything affected, things cancelled for you personally?
I think, the main announcement or the main measure or the latest one from the government now is banning any event with 1,000 people. So,
which was 5,000 a week ago.
Exactly. It's come down from 5,000. So, what does that mean in reality? It kind of means, gigs at music hall, concert halls, theatres are having to close depending on their capacity. What do you do if you're a theatre with 900 seats or whatever? In theory, you're allowed to stay open. There was an interesting story at the weekend about a French town trying to break the record for the number of people dressed as a Smurf in the village. So they gathered together 3,500 Smurfs, which in theory was legal at the time because events over 5,000 had been banned. However,
I thought it was legal because they weren't people; they were Smurfs.
No. These are real people painted in blue. And however, the local mayor got a lot of criticism because then the limit was reduced down to 1,000, and there's 3,500 people dressed in blue. So there's all these kind of grey areas.
Did they get the world record?
He's claiming they got the world record. Yeah, I mean it's one of these kind of it's a funny story to kind of make people laugh, but it shows how complicated things are in terms of what do these gatherings mean? Are they banned? Are they up to the venue themselves to cancel them? What will happen if a gig goes ahead with more than 1,000 people? We don't quite know. I think what we've seen in Italy and France is that when governments take these measures, their main aim is to raise public awareness. In Italy, when they've literally put the whole country in lockdown and limited travel and stuff, which is haven't had that in France. But even the Prime Minister was saying, look, this decree says stay at home. Just don't go out, don't put yourself at risk of either catching it or spreading it. Let's try and reduce the spread, reduce the numbers, reduce the pressure on the health service. So that's essentially the same message the French government are trying to get across. Take advice. Yes, we're introducing these measures because we need everybody to be aware because it's the public that play a part in spreading it and limiting the spread.
I know it's you've been working a lot on Italy. You brought up Italy there as the editor for the local Europe. I know it's dangerous to speculate, but Italy's quite far ahead of where France is at this point. Like seriously, right? Last I heard, the whole country is sort of on. I don't know if you'd say the whole country's on quarantine. Is that what you say?
Essentially, yeah. Quarantine, lockdown, restrictive measures.
So you've been monitoring the two countries. Does it look likely that we're going to see a duplication over here in France?
I mean, really, we don't know. We just, if you look at the numbers, then Italy had similar kind of numbers that France has now about maybe 10 days ago. The death toll was increasing 10 to 20 to 30 a day. I think in France at the moment, it's going up by about 5 to 10, between 5 and 10. So have the French government become more aware, given what's happened in Italy? So will that prevent the same kind of huge numbers of cases and, huge numbers of deaths occurring in France? That's what the French government are hoping. So they are, which is why they've taken measures to kind of ban events with more than 1,000 people, gatherings, football behind closed doors, etc. But, public transport is running. People are going to work. People are going to bars and cafes. People are going around to each other's houses. Schools are pretty much open, apart from in those affected areas where there's been a kind of an outbreak. So, in that sense, almost everything is at normal. But, new measures are being announced almost on a daily basis. So it's really, we just have to take it day by day at the moment.
And I know from the perspective of a tourist coming to Paris, I've been getting emails asking about, you mentioned public transport. There's no indication of anything happening there.
No, we're keeping a very close eye on it. What has been suggested might happen is that members of staff might exercise their right not to come to work because they feel as though it is unsafe for their health.
Sure.
There's a chance that they might.
You mean just the
catch it.
normal? You mean train drivers?
Train
and stuff?
drivers,
Yeah.
metro staff, the people who sell tickets.
I heard that one of the people that were infected was a metro.
Yeah, I
Is
think
that-
there's been 2 or 3 staff who work for the transport provider.
Sure.
Bearing in mind there's hundreds, if not thousands, who
Yeah.
work for the transport provider, who are now in, self-isolation or being treated. I don't know how serious their cases are. But, there's a chance that the staff, the unions might say, we want to protect our staff. So let's, we're going to exercise our right not to come to work. The government are saying we're not at that stage yet. There's no reason why you should do that. Again, it's something we just have to keep an eye on.
The staff at the Musée du Louvre, the Louvre Museum, they've
That's
reopened.
exactly what they did.
They've reopened though now, right?
They've reopened, but they exercised their right not to work for, I think, as a kind of protest to raise awareness that they felt unsafe,
Sure.
because of the huge numbers of tourists, people from around the world who visit the Louvre. After 3 days it reopened. They've kind of restricted ticket sales to those who buy tickets online. But it is open, as is the Eiffel Tower and the other main tourist sites in the capital.
Let's wind up. I know you're a busy man. You got a lot to do with all this, especially. But how do you see Paris and France being affected by this, short term, long term?
Short term, I think it's inevitable that there's going to be a hit on the economy. So kind of the government has been warning about that already. Just it affects kind of every aspect of life. And if, for example, schools are closed in an area, then parents can't get to work. Not everybody can work from home. Certain places you can't do that. Imagine if gatherings are banned, football matches are behind closed doors. Just think of the amount of money that spectators bring into these things. So it's going to have an economic impact from that level. I think from tourism, it's inevitable as well that it takes a hit. Again, bearing in mind, we've had strikes, we've had yellow vests, we've had terror attacks. The French tourism industry's really been under the cosh for a few years, and every time it looks like it's recovering, it takes another hit. I think, airlines around the world are just cancelling flights because of a lack of demand. People don't want to travel, and it's not so much people don't want to travel because they fear getting the virus. They just don't want to get stuck somewhere in quarantine or end up coming home and having 14 days in isolation, which is what they're advising anybody who go to Italy now. The British government's saying if you come home from Italy, you need to spend 14 days without contacting anybody, even if you have no symptoms. They're not warning that for visitors to France, but I think people just don't want to travel when something like this is going on. So then that's going to have a huge economic impact. But long term, you have to hope that that this is under control as soon as possible. Really. I think in China, we're talking maybe 2 months, but very, very draconian measures that, are they going to introduce them here if needs be? We'll have to wait and see, but you'd have to hope that by the summer we may have a different outlook than we do today.
And I should stress that it could be a lot more of a positive outlook, and that France, especially Paris, has been resilient, bouncing back from things like especially the terrorism attacks and everything. But Ben, to end on a slightly more positive note, not least because the outgoing music is quite a happy jingle, Paris is still Paris, right? For the people who are living here or who do decide to visit, they're still going to enjoy the city, right?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, part of me would think if you didn't read the news like I do every day, you probably wouldn't notice anything was going on, really. Apart from these events that are cancelled. But, cafes are full, terraces are full, the weather's getting slightly warmer. It's been terrible weather recently in Paris. I think it's been raining for like a month.
The river's flooded,
Yeah, the river is flooded again, once a year. But, it's getting warmer, I can feel it.
Yeah.
So spring in
here.
Paris is probably the best time to be here. So let's just hope that kind of it stays like that, essentially.
Exactly. I'm with you on that one. There's plenty to do in the city. When the Louvre reopened, did you see the people that were down there?
Yeah, there was. I mean, I think news got round, and within half an hour or something, there was hundreds of people queuing to get back to see the Mona Lisa, So, for the most part, it's life as normal.
Life is normal. There you go, guys. That's Ben McPartland from The Local Europe. Check out their reporting on France, thelocal.fr, and Italy, thelocal.it, and all the other countries around Europe, all in English, guys. Ben, thank you for coming in the studio.
Thanks, Ollie.
And I'll see you out on a terrace somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Ollie.